Ethan Voss never planned to buy a spaceship that night. He had only come to the underground auction to watch, maybe pick up some cheap scrap if he got lucky. But as he stood in the dimly lit warehouse, surrounded by traders, smugglers, and shady dealers, he made the biggest mistake of his life, or maybe the best decision ever. The auctioneer, a four-armed alien with dull gray skin, slammed a metallic hammer on the podium. "Next item." His translator barked in a scratchy voice. A rare, fully intact Sendarian-class starship. No registered owner. Sold as is. Bidding starts at 50,000 credits. A murmur spread through the crowd. Sendarian ships were legendary, advanced, powerful, and, most importantly, fast. But something was off. The starting price was too low. Even a broken Sendarian ship should have been worth 10 times that. Ethan frowned, shifting on his feet. He wasn't rich. His own ship, the Rust Bucket, barely held together, and his last cargo job barely paid for fuel. He wasn't looking for trouble, but the thought of owning a real ship, not some half-broken freighter, was too tempting. The bidding began. A few traders raised their hands, but most hesitated. Rumors whispered through the crowd. Was the ship cursed? Stolen? Haunted? 100,000 credits. Someone called. 110,000. Ethan didn't even realize he had raised his hand until the auctioneer pointed at him. 150,000 from the human. His heart pounded. He had nowhere near that much money. Maybe he could take out a loan, sell some parts. Going once, going twice. Silence. Sold. To the human. Ethan's stomach dropped. The crowd stared at him, some shaking their heads, others chuckling like they had just watched a fool seal his fate. The auctioneer grinned, showing sharp teeth. "Congratulations, bidder. The ship is now yours." The deal was done. There was no turning back. Ethan stood before his new spaceship. It rested on the landing pad outside the warehouse, bathed in the glow of distant neon lights. The design was sleek, with smooth curves and a metallic blue surface that reflected the stars above. It was not like any human ship. Too elegant, too advanced. As he approached, the ship's hull shimmered like it was alive. The boarding ramp extended with a soft hiss. "Okay," Ethan muttered. "That's not creepy at all." Cautiously, he stepped inside. The interior was strangely silent. No dust, no damage, just smooth, curved walls pulsing with faint blue lights. The control panels were alien, covered in strange symbols he couldn't read. "All right, let's see if I can fly this thing," Ethan said, moving toward the main console. Before he could touch anything, the ship sealed itself shut. A voice, female and commanding, echoed through the cabin. The words were alien, but the tone was clear. "Who dares enter my vessel?" Ethan froze. Hello. No response. Then, without warning, a hologram flickered to life in front of him. A woman appeared, tall, fierce, and unmistakably alien. Her deep violet eyes glowed, and her silver hair flowed like liquid metal. She wore strange armor that shimmered like the walls of the ship. Ethan blinked. Who are you?" She narrowed her eyes. Her next words came through the ship's translator, her voice now cold and sharp. "You are the new owner of this vessel. By ancient law, that means you have claimed me as well." Ethan felt his stomach twist. "Wait. What? Claimed? No, I just bought a ship." The woman's eyes glowed brighter, and suddenly, the ship's walls trembled. "You do not understand, human. You have not just purchased a ship. You have awakened a legacy, and I will determine if you are worthy, or if you should be eliminated." The last word echoed through the ship. Ethan swallowed hard. Well, this wasn't in the auction details. Ethan Voss took a slow step back, his heart pounding. The alien woman stood before him, her violet eyes glowing like twin stars. She wasn't real, just a hologram, but there was something about her presence that made the air feel heavy. You're not real, right?" he asked, forcing a nervous chuckle. The woman tilted her head slightly. I am Ravane, last of the Xendarian Guardian Corps. This ship is my domain. And now you stand before me as its so-called master. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what she had just said. Okay, hold on. I don't know what a Guardian Corps is, but I think there's been a big mistake. I just bought this ship. I didn't sign up for anything else. Ravanee's gaze hardened. A Xendarian warship is not an object to be bought and sold like human scrap. It is bonded to its guardian. To own this ship means to claim its core. Me. Ethan raised his hands. No offense, but I don't own people. That's not how things work where I come from. Ravanee's expression remained unreadable. Then you are either a fool or a liar. Suddenly, the ship shook violently, as if something massive had slammed into it. Ethan stumbled, barely catching himself against a smooth control panel. What was that? He shouted. Ravanee's hologram flickered for a second before stabilizing. You have brought danger upon us, human. The moment you claimed this vessel, you placed a target on your back. Ethan's stomach twisted. Who's after us? Ravanee didn't answer immediately. Instead, she raised her hand, and the walls of the ship shimmered. A new holographic display appeared, showing a large, dark warship hovering just outside the landing bay. Its cannons were already charging. That, Ravanee said coldly, is the Gorak warlords. They want this ship, and they will not leave without it. Ethan's mind raced. He had heard of the Goraks before, brutal mercenaries, known for seizing advanced technology and selling it to the highest bidder. If they wanted this ship, they wouldn't stop until they tore it apart. We need to get out of here, Ethan said, his voice tight. Ravanee's expression didn't change. You do not give commands, human. This ship will not fly unless I allow it. Ethan groaned. Seriously, you're still going on about this. Either we work together, or we both end up dead. For a moment, Ravanee just stared at him. Then, without a word, her hologram vanished, and the ship's engines roared to life. Ethan barely had time to grab the controls before the ship lurched into the air, rocketing out of the landing bay just as the Gorak warship fired a plasma cannon straight at them. The energy blast narrowly missed, shaking the ship violently. Not bad, Ethan muttered under his breath. But let's see what this thing can really do. He grabbed the flight controls and pushed the ship into a hard turn, trying to weave through the massive city towers that surrounded them. The Gorak ship pursued, firing rapidly. Engaging defense protocols, Ravanee's voice echoed through the ship. Panels along the ship's hull shifted, revealing energy shields that absorbed the enemy blasts. Ethan let out a breath. Okay, that's useful. But the Goraks weren't giving up. A second warship appeared, cutting off their escape route. Ethan's grip tightened on the controls. Any ideas, lady? Ravanee's voice remained calm. The ship's weapon systems are locked. Only the rifle pilot can activate them. Ethan shot a look at the holographic display. Let me guess. That rifle pilot is you. Correct. Ethan gritted his teeth. Fine. You want to test me. Do it after we survive. For a moment, silence. Then, the weapons panel unlocked, glowing with energy. Prove your worth, human, Ravanee said. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed the targeting controls, locked onto the nearest Gorak fighter, and fired. A pulse of blue energy shot from the ship's cannons, hitting the enemy vessel dead center. The explosion lit up the sky. Ha! Ethan shouted. How's that for proof? But there was no time to celebrate. The second warship was already charging its main cannon. Ethan's mind raced. He didn't have enough time to dodge. Then, an idea hit him. Hey, Ravanee. This ship, can it jump? A micro-jump within planetary atmosphere is extremely dangerous. Ethan glanced at the massive cannon, its energy glow blindingly bright. More dangerous than that. Another pause. Then, engaging jump drive. The ship lurched as the stars around them twisted into a swirl of blue light. A split second later, they reappeared, far beyond the city, past the planet's outer orbit. The Gorek ships were gone. Ethan let out a long breath, leaning back in his seat. That was intense. The hologram of Ravani flickered back into view. She studied him for a long moment. You fight well, human, but this is far from over. Ethan smirked. Figured as much. He looked at the vast expanse of space before them. He had just wanted a better ship. Now he was on the run from mercenaries, piloting a legendary warship, and stuck with an alien woman who still didn't trust him. Things were getting interesting, and he had a feeling this was just the beginning. Ethan slumped back in the pilot's seat, running a hand through his hair. His heart was still pounding from the chase. A few hours ago, he was just another salvage trader, looking for a deal. Now, he was flying a stolen alien warship, being hunted by mercenaries, and dealing with a very serious-looking alien woman who thought she belonged to him. This is crazy, he muttered to himself. Ravani's hologram flickered into existence beside him. This is only the beginning, she said, her voice calm but firm. Ethan sighed. Yeah, I figured. So, what now? You must prove yourself worthy, she replied. Ethan groaned. Again with this worthy thing. Look, I told you. I don't own you. I just wanted a ship. Not whatever this is. He gestured vaguely at her and the glowing controls around him. Ravani's glowing violet eyes studied him, unreadable. You misunderstand, human. The bond between a Xandarian core and her ship is not one of ownership, but honor. Only those who are strong, clever, and capable of command can pilot a Xandarian warship. Ethan frowned. So, what? You're testing me? Yes, Ravani said simply. If you fail, I will take control of this ship and remove you from it. Ethan's stomach twisted. Remove me how? Ravani didn't blink. By launching you into space. Ethan paled. You're joking, right? She did not look like she was joking. Okay, Ethan said, raising his hands. Look, let's just take a second and think, all right. I did just save both of us back there. Doesn't that count for something? Ravani's expression remained neutral. It was a passable display of skill, but skill alone is not enough. A true pilot must earn the trust of the ship and its guardian. Ethan shook his head. You're really serious about this, huh? I am. Ethan exhaled. Fine. What do I have to do? Ravani's hologram flickered as if she was considering something. Then the ship's lights dimmed, and a new holographic screen appeared in front of Ethan. It displayed a list of planets, some marked with warning signs, others with strange symbols. You must take us to a location of my choosing, Ravani said. There, you will be tested. Ethan glanced at the list. And if I refuse? The ship shook slightly, as if warning him. You will find yourself without a ship and without air to breathe. Ethan swallowed. Right. Of course. No pressure. He scanned the planets, looking for one that didn't seem like instant death. Finally, he pointed at a small moon on the list. It was marked with a single Xandarian symbol. That one, he said. Where is it? Ravani's eyes glowed slightly. A desolate moon, once used as a Xandarian training ground. It is abandoned now, but it will serve our purpose. Ethan sighed. Fine. Setting course. As he activated the ship's navigation, Ravani watched him closely. You are unlike the humans I have observed, she said suddenly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah? How so? She tilted her head. Your kind is known for greed, arrogance, and a reckless thirst for power. Yet you hesitate to claim what you have won. Ethan chuckled. I'm not greedy. I'm just trying to stay alive. Ravani studied him for a moment before looking away. We shall see. Hours later, the Xandarian moon. The ship landed smoothly on the rocky, barren surface. Outside, the sky was dark, with a distant red star glowing dimly. The air was thin, the ground covered in strange metallic structures, remnants of an ancient civilization. Ethan unbuckled himself and stood. All right, we're here. Now what? The ship's hatch opened with a hiss. Ravani's voice echoed through the chamber. You will step outside. Alone. Ethan frowned. And you? I will observe. Ethan hesitated. And what exactly am I supposed to do out there? Survive. Ethan sighed. Great, that's comforting. Still, he grabbed a breathing mask from the ship's emergency supplies, strapped a small blaster to his side, and stepped out onto the cold, dead surface of the moon. As soon as his boots touched the ground, a loud metallic groan echoed through the air. Ethan spun around. Oh, what was that? Ravani's voice came through the ship's communicator. The test has begun. Suddenly, the ground shook, and something massive emerged from the dust. It was a towering four-legged machine, covered in rusted armor but still functional. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Ethan. Ethan's pulse skyrocketed. You've got to be kidding me. The machine charged, its heavy legs crushing the ground beneath it. Ethan didn't think. He ran. Blaster shots rang out as he fired behind him, but the energy bolts barely scratched the machine's armor. Ravani, he shouted into the communicator. A little help here. Her voice remained calm. Use your environment, human. If you are truly worthy, you will find a way. Ethan gritted his teeth. Fantastic. Great motivational speech. Really helpful. His eyes darted across the landscape. There, a collapsed metal tower, its structure weakened by time. If he could lure the machine beneath it. Ethan turned, firing a few shots to get the machine's attention. Then he sprinted toward the tower. As he reached the base, he grabbed a loose support beam and yanked it as hard as he could. The tower groaned, then collapsed. The metal structure crashed down onto the machine, crushing it in an explosion of dust and sparks. Ethan dropped to his knees, panting. Holy, that actually worked. Ravani's voice came through again. Impressive. You do not rely solely on brute force. Ethan smirked, wiping sweat from his brow. Yeah, well, we humans like to think outside the box. There was a pause. Then, for the first time, Ravani's tone softened. Perhaps you are not as unworthy as I thought. Ethan chuckled. I'll take that as a compliment. As he stood, the ship's lights glowed brighter, and for the first time, Ethan felt like the ship itself was acknowledging him. Maybe, just maybe, he had a chance. Ethan stood over the wreckage of the fallen war machine, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. The cold, thin air of the Xandarian moon made every inhale feel shallow, but at least he was still alive. The ship's communicator crackled, and Ravani's voice echoed through his earpiece. You performed adequately. Ethan huffed a laugh. Adequately? I just took down a giant killer robot with nothing but my brain and a lucky shot. There was a brief pause before Ravani replied. Survival is not luck. It is proof of adaptability. Ethan rolled his eyes. Right, well, I'd rather adapt inside the ship. This place is freezing. He turned and started making his way back, his boots crunching against the dry, rocky surface. The towering ruins around him cast long shadows under the red-tinted sky. As he neared the ship, its hull shimmered, as if recognizing his presence. The boarding ramp extended smoothly, welcoming him inside. That was new. Ethan stepped aboard, feeling the warmth of the interior wrap around him. The ship's systems hummed to life, and the control panels flickered with soft blue light. It almost felt like the ship itself was greeting him. Ravani's hologram appeared in front of him, her glowing violet eyes watching him closely. The ship is responding to you now. It recognizes your potential. Ethan crossed his arms. So, does this mean I pass your test? Ravani was silent for a moment before nodding. For now. Ethan groaned. Of course. There's always a for now with you, huh? Instead of answering, Ravani turned toward the ship's control panel. With a wave of her hand, holographic symbols appeared in the air, shifting and rearranging like a puzzle. Ethan squinted at them. "What are you doing?" "Activating deeper systems," she replied. "Now that you have shown some level of competence, the ship will begin unlocking its true capabilities." Before Ethan could ask what that meant, the ship rumbled slightly. The air around them grew heavier, charged with an unseen energy. Then something incredible happened. The walls of the ship shifted. What had once been smooth metal panels now pulsed with faint, living light, like the ship itself was waking up. The main control console, once cold and mechanical, now flowed like liquid metal, reshaping itself into a form that fit Ethan's hands perfectly. Ethan blinked. "Whoa, okay. That's new." "The ship is adapting to you," Ravani said. "It accepts you as a potential pilot." Ethan hesitated, then placed his hands on the new controls. As soon as he did, a flood of information rushed into his mind. Not as words, but as instincts. He suddenly knew how to adjust the ship's shields, how to navigate its hidden warp pathways, even how to activate a stealth mode he hadn't known existed. He gasped and yanked his hands away. What the hell was that? Ravani tilted her head slightly. "A fragment of the ship's memory. It is sharing its knowledge with you." Ethan flexed his fingers, still feeling a faint tingling sensation. "So, I just learned how to fly this thing without even trying." "Not entirely," Ravani corrected. "The ship will only share what it deems necessary. You must still prove yourself worthy of command." Ethan let out a long breath. "Man, you really don't make anything easy, do you?" Before Ravani could respond, the ship's warning system flashed red. A deep alarm pulsed through the chamber. Ethan tensed. Now what? Ravani's expression darkened. "The Gorak warlords have found us." Ethan spun toward the main screen, which now displayed a massive warship emerging from hyperspace. It was bigger than the last one, twice as heavily armed, with swarms of smaller fighters launching from its hull. "Great," Ethan muttered. "They just don't give up, do they?" "They will not stop until they reclaim this ship," Ravani said. "They believe it is their right to own advanced technology." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Well, that makes two of us." He sat down in the pilot's seat, the controls adjusting to his touch like they had been waiting for him. "All right, let's see what this thing can do." Ravani studied him for a long moment before stepping forward. "You will require my assistance." Ethan smirked. "I was hoping you'd say that." The Gorak warship opened fire. Bright energy beams sliced through space, heading straight for them. Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed the controls and rolled the ship hard to the right, narrowly avoiding the first volley. The ship responded instantly, as if it already knew what he was about to do. "This thing is fast," Ethan said in awe. "It was built for war," Ravani reminded him. "Now use it." The enemy fighters swarmed toward them, forming an attack formation. Ethan grinned. "Let's give them a surprise." With a flick of his hand, he activated the stealth mode the ship had revealed to him. Immediately, the ship vanished, not just from sight, but from sensors as well. The enemy fighters hesitated, momentarily confused. Ethan used the distraction to loop behind them, locking onto their weak points. "Targeting systems engage," Ravani said. "Firing now." Ethan launched a spread of energy missiles, and in an instant 3 enemy fighters exploded. The warship, realizing what had happened, turned its massive cannons toward them. But Ethan was already moving. He pushed the ship into a full-speed dive, skimming just above the moon's surface. The Gorak warship fired, but Ethan used the rocky terrain to dodge and weave, making it impossible for them to get a lock. "Your piloting is improving," Ravani admitted. Ethan grinned. "Told you I was adaptable." He suddenly pulled up sharply, heading straight for the Gorak warship. Ravani's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Trust me." At the last second, Ethan rolled sideways and activated the ship's pulse disruptor, an electromagnetic blast that fried the enemy ship's targeting systems. The massive warship shuddered, its cannons shutting down. Ethan punched the thrusters. Now let's get out of here before they fix that. The ship jumped into hyperspace, leaving the Gorax behind. As the stars streaked past, Ethan leaned back, letting out a breath. Ravenite looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You are beginning to earn this ship's trust," she said. "And mine." Ethan smirked. "Good, because I have a feeling we're gonna need each other." The ship hummed in agreement, and for the first time, Ethan felt like he truly belonged here. The adventure was just beginning. The ship emerged from hyperspace, leaving the battle behind. The streaks of light outside the window faded, revealing a quiet sector of space filled with distant stars. For the first time since Ethan had boarded the ship, there was silence. Ethan let out a deep breath and leaned back in the pilot's chair. Well, that was close. Ravani's hologram appeared beside him, arms crossed. "You performed better than expected. However, your reckless maneuvering could have resulted in failure." Ethan smirked. "Yeah, but it didn't, did it?" Ravani sighed. "You humans rely too much on chance." Ethan stretched his arms. "And yet, we always seem to pull through." The ship hummed softly, its glowing panels dimming slightly, as if also catching its breath. Ethan had to admit, he was starting to feel like the ship was alive, watching, judging, and maybe accepting him. He turned toward Ravane. "All right, now that we're safe, I need some answers. Who exactly were those guys chasing us? And why do they want this ship so badly?" Ravani's glowing violet eyes studied him carefully. "You are finally asking the right questions." She gestured toward the central console, and the ship's holographic display shifted, revealing an ancient star map. It showed multiple planets, some marked in blue, others in red. "This ship is one of the last remaining Xendarian warships," she explained. "It was built during the Great War between my people and the Gorak warlords." Ethan leaned forward. "Wait, war?" Ravani nodded. "A war that nearly wiped out my civilization." Ethan frowned. "I thought you said the ship was abandoned." "It was," she said, her voice quiet. "Because my people are gone." Ethan blinked. "Gone." Ravani's expression remained unreadable. "The war lasted centuries. The Goraks were relentless. One by one, the Xendarian strongholds fell. My people fought bravely, but in the end, we were outnumbered." Ethan swallowed. "So, you're saying you're the last of your kind?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Ethan felt a strange weight settle in his chest. He had been treating this whole situation like some kind of wild adventure, but for Ravani, it was something much deeper. I'm sorry," he said, not knowing what else to say. Ravani turned toward the star map. "This ship was one of the last great warships of my people, but before the final battle, it was sent away to hide. It carried something important, something the Goraks have been searching for ever since." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Wait, what does it have?" Ravani's eyes locked onto his. "A secret that could change the balance of power in the galaxy." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "And now I have it." Ravani nodded. "Yes, and that is why the Goraks will not stop hunting us." Ethan rubbed his temples. "Great, just what I needed. An entire army of space warlords after me." Ravani ignored his sarcasm. "You wished to know the truth. Now you do. The question is, what will you do with it?" Ethan exhaled. He was just a salvager, a traitor who stumbled into this mess. But now he was flying a ship that held something dangerous, and the entire galaxy wanted it. Still, something inside him refused to walk away. He looked at Ravani. "Well, first things first, we need to figure out what this secret actually is." Ravani hesitated. "It is not that simple." "Of course it isn't," Ethan muttered. "Why not?" Ravani turned back to the console. "The knowledge is locked deep within the ship's core. Only someone deemed worthy by the ship itself can access it. Ethan groaned. Oh great, another test. Ravani smirked slightly. You are getting used to them. Ethan shook his head. All right, fine. How do I prove myself this time? Ravani's hologram flickered, and suddenly, the ship's lights dimmed. The air felt heavier. The ship has already decided the next trial, she said. We must go to the Xendarian vault. Ethan raised an eyebrow. The what now? A hidden sanctuary where my people stored their most powerful knowledge, Ravani explained. If the ship believes you are ready, it will guide us there. Ethan glanced at the controls. Sure enough, the navigation system had already locked onto a new location, a distant, unmarked sector of space. Ethan exhaled. Well, guess we're going on another trip. He reached for the controls, but then hesitated. There was something different now. This wasn't just about escaping enemies anymore. He was starting to feel like he was part of something bigger. He looked at Ravani. Hey, before we go, I need to know one thing. She tilted her head. What is it? Ethan hesitated. Why does the ship trust me? Ravani was silent for a long moment. Then finally she said, because despite everything, you have not tried to take power. You have only tried to earn it. Ethan blinked. He hadn't expected that answer. Before he could respond, the ship's engines roared to life, and the ship shot forward into hyperspace. Their journey was far from over. And something told Ethan that his real test was only just beginning. The ship streaked through hyperspace, its engines humming with quiet energy. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, watching the swirling tunnel of blue and white light outside. Despite everything he had been through, he still couldn't believe where he was, piloting an ancient warship with a mysterious alien woman on a mission that could change the fate of the galaxy. This is insane, he muttered to himself. Ravani stood beside him, her violet eyes scanning the ship's interface. You are adapting. Ethan glanced at her. Yeah, well, when a bunch of space warlords are hunting you, you learn fast. The ship beeped, and the hyperspace tunnel flickered, signaling they were about to arrive. Approaching destination, Ravani said. Ethan sat up. All right, let's see what this vault looks like. With a final pulse of energy, the ship dropped out of hyperspace, revealing a dark, empty void. There were no stars, no planets, just endless blackness. Ethan frowned. Did we break the universe? Ravani ignored his joke and pointed toward the navigation screen. The vault is hidden. The ship will guide us. Ethan watched as the ship moved on its own, gliding forward into the darkness. Suddenly, the void shimmered, and a massive structure appeared in front of them. It was enormous, floating like a forgotten fortress in space. The structure was octagonal, its metallic surface covered in glowing blue symbols. It looked ancient, yet untouched by time. Ethan whistled. Now that is impressive. The Xendarian vault, Ravani said, a note of emotion in her voice. The last great secret of my people. Ethan piloted the ship closer. As they approached, a circular doorway in the structure began to glow, and a beam of light scanned their ship. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the ship's speakers. Access restricted. Identity required. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What do I say? Before Ravani could respond, the ship spoke for him. Candidate identified. Verification in progress. Ethan's heart pounded. The ship was verifying him. The vault responded. Candidate trial initiated. Suddenly, the ship lurched, and a bright light filled the cockpit. Ethan barely had time to react before his vision blurred, and everything around him vanished. The trial begins. Ethan blinked and found himself standing on solid ground. But it wasn't the ship. It wasn't anywhere he recognized. He looked around. He was in a desert, the sky above him a deep shade of purple. Strange, towering pillars of stone stretched into the distance, glowing symbols carved into them. What the hell? He muttered. A voice echoed in his mind. To claim the knowledge of the Xandarians, you must prove yourself. Ethan turned sharply. Standing before him was a figure in armor, tall and imposing. Its helmet covered its face, and in its hands it held a long glowing spear. Ethan swallowed. Yeah, I had a feeling this wouldn't be easy. The armored figure charged. Ethan dodged, barely avoiding the strike. The spear slammed into the ground, sending a shockwave through the desert. Ethan stumbled back, kicking up dust. Okay, let's talk about this, he shouted. The figure didn't stop. It lunged again, faster this time. Ethan rolled to the side, barely escaping. He needed a plan. Fast. He scanned his surroundings. The stone pillars. Maybe he could use them. Ethan sprinted toward the nearest one, the warrior close behind. As soon as he reached it, he jumped, grabbing onto the glowing carvings and pulling himself upward. The warrior hesitated for a moment, then hurled its spear. Ethan barely dodged. The spear sliced past his arm, leaving a burning sensation. He gritted his teeth and climbed higher. Then something clicked in his mind. He wasn't supposed to fight the warrior. He was supposed to understand it. Ethan stopped climbing and turned. You're testing me, aren't you? The warrior stood still. Ethan took a deep breath. I get it now. The Xandarians weren't just warriors. They were thinkers, strategists. He raised his hands. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to learn. The air shifted. The warrior slowly lowered its spear. Then its helmet retracted, revealing a face, an alien with glowing white eyes and ancient markings on its skin. It studied him carefully. Ethan held his breath. Then the warrior nodded. The trial was over. The vault opens. Ethan's vision blurred again, and suddenly he was back in the ship's cockpit. He gasped, his heart still racing. Ravane stood over him, her expression unreadable. You succeeded. Ethan blinked. I think so. The ship rumbled, and the Xandarian vault's doors opened, revealing a vast chamber filled with floating data cores, each one glowing with ancient knowledge. Ravane's voice was quiet. You are now worthy to access the knowledge of my people. Ethan swallowed hard. He had come a long way from being just a salvager, and something told him this was only the beginning. The vault's doors stood wide open, revealing a chamber filled with floating data cores, each pulsing softly with blue light. The air inside shimmered, as if time itself had slowed down within these walls. Ethan stepped forward cautiously, his boots making no sound against the metallic floor. He glanced at Ravane, who stood beside him, her violet eyes locked onto the glowing orbs. This is incredible, Ethan whispered. This is the knowledge of my people, Ravane said, her voice quieter than usual. Everything we were, everything we built, it is all stored here. Ethan exhaled slowly. He wasn't a scientist, a warrior, or a hero. He was just a salvager who had bid on the wrong ship, and yet somehow he had ended up standing inside one of the greatest secrets in the galaxy. He reached out toward the nearest data core. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, the blue light flashed, and suddenly, visions of the past. Ethan wasn't in the vault anymore. He was standing on a beautiful world, its sky a deep shade of violet, with towering crystal spires in the distance. The air smelled fresh, and a soft breeze carried the sound of laughter and music. He saw the Xandarians, Ravane's people, walking through grand cities of floating platforms and golden towers. They were tall, elegant beings, each one marked by the same glowing eyes and patterns that Ravane had. They were a civilization at their peak. But then, everything changed. The sky darkened, and Ethan saw massive warships descending from above. Fire and destruction rained upon the cities. The Xandarians fought back with advanced technology, but the enemy was relentless. The Gorak warlords had come. Ethan watched as the war unfolded. Centuries of knowledge and culture burned away in mere moments. The Xandarians refused to surrender, but they were outnumbered. And then he saw her, a Xandarian woman, standing inside a warship, just like the one he had won. She placed her hand on the ship's controls, her face filled with sorrow. She spoke in a language Ethan didn't understand, but somehow he knew what she was saying. If we fall, let this knowledge survive. One day, the worthy will return. The ship's engines roared, and it vanished into the void, carrying the last hope of the Xandarian people. Then, darkness. Ethan gasped and stumbled backward, back inside the vault. His breathing was heavy, his heart pounding. The vision had felt too real. Ravenai studied him. You saw it, didn't you? Ethan nodded. The war. Your people. They knew they wouldn't survive. So they sent the knowledge away, hoping someone would find it. Ravenai turned toward the floating data cores. Yes. And now, that someone is you. Ethan rubbed his face. Great. No pressure or anything. The final choice. A soft humming filled the vault, and a new hologram appeared in the center, a message left by the last Xandarians. It spoke in their language, but the ship's systems translated it for them. To the one who has reached this place, you now hold the last hope of our people. With this knowledge, you can rebuild, create, and restore balance to the galaxy. Ethan frowned. Restore balance? How? The hologram shifted, displaying two choices. One option, share the knowledge. Reveal the Xandarian secrets to the galaxy. This would allow civilizations to advance, to learn from their wisdom. But it would also mean that powerful factions, including the Orcs, could get their hands on it. The other option, lock the vault forever. Keep the knowledge hidden, ensuring that no one, good or bad, could misuse it. Ethan exhaled. You've got to be kidding me. I have to choose. The choice was always meant to be yours, Ravenai said. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. If he released the knowledge, it could do so much good. It could help people, bring new technology, maybe even unite the galaxy. But the wrong people could twist it. The Orcs had spent centuries hunting this ship. If they got access to the vault's secrets, they could become unstoppable. Ethan clenched his fists. What would the Xandarians have wanted? He looked at Ravenai. What do you think? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. The fact that you are asking means you are worthy of this decision. Ethan sighed. Yeah, that doesn't make it easier. He looked at the glowing options in front of him. And then, finally, he chose. A new beginning. The vault rumbled, accepting his decision. The data cores shifted, their glow changing, as the Xandarian's final wish was fulfilled. Ethan wasn't sure what would happen next. But one thing was certain. He was no longer just a salvager. He was now a part of something far greater. As he and Ravenai walked back to the ship, he turned to her with a smirk. So, does this mean I officially own the coolest spaceship in the galaxy? Ravenai rolled her eyes. Do not let it go to your head, human. Ethan laughed, stepping into the pilot's seat. The ship's systems activated, responding to him like never before. A new journey was about to begin. And this time, he was ready for it.